Alan.
Yes.
Okay, can we give him our undivided attention? Thank you so much for coming. I'm Lynn Anderson. I'm the treasurer of Rockdale Democratic Party. John Penn, first vice chair, and as you know, Cheryl's the chair. Okay. Well, thank you again for coming.
I'm happy to be at an event like this
Okay.
because I've had a fair amount of experience.
Your name?
My name is Dien Winfield, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate seat in the special election that will fill out the term vacated by Johnny Isakson. There's no primary. The election goes till November 3rd. I think it's likely there'll be a runoff that will go all the way to January 5th. And it could be the one race on which control of the Senate may hinge. So it's one of the most important races in the country. And no vote will be wasted, as Stacey Abrams showed. So the numbers of likely Democratic voters and Republican voters is very, very close. Even if the Republicans make use of voter suppression, we still have a real chance. Now, I ran 2 years ago in District 10 for Congress, U.S. Congress, and I saw the real intense limitations on our political freedom, where there's a tremendous gerrymandering that makes it almost impossible for a Democratic candidate to win. In addition to that, it's impossible to get the resources to get your message out to the voters. And I found that more than a majority, more than half the voters came to the polls knowing absolutely nothing about the candidates or what they stood for. And there's very little opportunity to get any message out because there's no serious reporting in these districts. There's no TV coverage, and TV doesn't really get involved with the issues. The print media has disappeared, and at political events, candidates are not given the time to discuss the issues in any meaningful way. You're asked to give an elevator speech, as some of you saw at the DeKalb party meeting last week, or you're asked to give a sound bite, and the audience has no time to ask any questions or debate anything. You go to one political gathering after another, it's like a cheerleading event with no real debate about where we as a party should go. And I've been to meetings of our party, both in Athens, where I've been living since 1982, and I've been to statewide meetings. I went to meetings in more than 20 county Democratic monthly gatherings, and almost never, in fact, I might even say never, is there any real discussion of what we stand for. I think there's something wrong with that political culture. I hope it will change, but I'm happy to be here, where hopefully you will give me time, and you will not let me get away with spending my time telling you for 3/4 of my time who I am, what were the struggles of my family, etc., and then spend a couple of minutes telling you what I stand for, preaching to the choir, and having you just sit there like a passive audience. So I want you to actively engage what I'm going to put before you, because I am pushing the envelope. I'm not doing what any other candidate is doing, because I'm here to take the fight to Washington, to fulfill all of the social rights that can unchain our democracy. And I'm talking about the social rights that are not protected by our Constitution. And our failure to protect them, even recognize them, has haunted our republic from the beginning. And although we could say that we're a great nation, a superpower, with more wealth than any nation in human history, more military power than any history, no one can say that we are a righteous nation, let alone the most righteous nation in human history. But because we are a great power, no foreign forces are in a position to restrict our efforts to become righteous. If we have not fulfilled all our rights, and above all our social, our social rights, it's because we allow ourselves to be governed by greed, by callousness, and political cowardice. Now, I think we've seen in the last 200 years, much of our history is occupied with having the limited rights that our Constitution grants, rights restricted to civil rights concerning property and participation in the legal process, and rights concerning political participation. Well, we've been engaged in several hundred years of struggles to have those rights applied consistently and not to remain privileges. So we all know at the outset our republic started as a republic in which the only people who could exercise their rights were white men with property. Yet, all of the great achievements of the civil rights movement have shown us that they are not enough to allow us to be free. The social disadvantage, remaining entrenched between white and black men and women, has not in any way been removed. We haven't been able to address the general increase in wealth inequality that is undermining the political equality on which democracy depends. We're not being able to address the great challenges we face, climate change, nuclear proliferation, and so forth. And we're not going to be able to address any of these problems unless we attend to the social rights. As Martin Luther King put it, if you don't have a job or income, you have neither life nor liberty nor the opportunity to engage in the pursuit of happiness. Now, I want to sort of discuss the most basic social right of all, on which the fulfillment of the others depend, and another one that consists in the capstone, without which none of our rights can be protected. I'm speaking on the one hand of the true right to work, and on the other hand, the right to have equal access to the legal process. We have neither in our society, because we are free to be unemployed. We are free to work at poverty wages. Despite the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, which gives us supposedly representation in criminal cases, we all know how unequal that representation is, and I'll speak more about that in a moment. And we have no guarantee of having any legal representation in civil cases, which means we cannot defend the rights we have. Now, to fulfill the right to a job at a fair wage, we need to have a federal job guarantee, which means the government has to come in and offer anyone who cannot find work, full-time work, in the marketplace. They must provide them with an offer to work at a fair wage, to do the kind of things the market is not providing that we need, such as all those goods and services that will help us refurbish our infrastructure, provide for green energy, provide for public transportation, to rebuild new affordable housing and refurbish the dilapidated housing that so many people live in, to provide public transportation, to upgrade all our public institutions, to provide the care that people need. All of this, and of course to bring the arts to the public. You know, all of these can be provided by a federal job guarantee, which is transformative first and foremost for those who can't find work at a decent wage. And that inability is what is at the root of our economic insecurity and lack of independence. Because if we guarantee employment at a fair wage, then we shut down the school to prison pipeline. Everyone coming of age knows they will have a job awaiting them at a fair wage and be able to do something that benefits their community. This puts the brake on mass incarceration, because everyone will know they have a legal way of earning a decent living, and anyone coming out of prison will have that opportunity to work in behalf of our needs at a fair wage. Now, when I speak of a fair wage, we have to make sure we're not begging for something as little as a living wage. which I'm afraid the labor movement and the Democratic Party has resigned itself to. A living wage at $15 an hour is a poverty wage. It's an invitation to homelessness. It's an invitation to increased inequality of wealth and income. And the government's own figures tell us that in no city in America can you afford a one-bedroom apartment if you make $15 an hour. Now we have to stand up for a completely different principle of fairness, of a fair wage. And that means a wage should be not just enough to let us survive, but to both live in dignity, be able to exercise all our freedoms on a par with others, and be able to benefit from the rising prosperity of the nation. That means that wages have to rise not just with inflation, but with the increasing production of wealth of the nation, the increasing productivity. And if you do the math, guess what the minimum wage should be?
About 20-something dollars an hour.
How much?
20-something more dollars.
Exactly, $22 an hour. Which comes out to, well, let's say we're a little bit more modest, we say $20 an hour. That comes to $41,600 a year. Now, if we do that and have a federal job guarantee, we wipe out at one blow unemployment and poverty wages. We also need to extend equivalent replacement income to everyone who is on disability benefits and retirement benefits, such as from Social Security. Do any of you know, by the way, what the average disability payment from Social Security is per month? I think it's more. It's $1,200 actually. Well, the figures I have are $1,200, which may be more than what you're quoting, but it's still not enough to live on decently. And the average Social Security payment per month is $1,400 a month. Less than a living wage, which is itself a poverty wage. We have to increase those payments so that we wipe out not only unemployment, poverty income, poverty wages, but poverty income across the board. Now, when we do that, we're taking the first step to really overcome intergenerational poverty and wipe out once and for all racial and gender disadvantage. It's necessary but not sufficient. We have to add some things. We have to, first of all, add fair employee empowerment, because there is an increasing imbalance, between the power of employees and employers. We need to have collective bargaining in every single workplace with multiple employees. We need to have seating on corporate boards of employees who should have 50% of the seats. That will completely transform what is going on. And by the way, when we have eliminated unemployment with the federal job guarantee, we transform the situations of those of us who have jobs, because we eliminate the fear of firing. And it's the fear of firing which prevents people from being able to fight for their rights, to fight against sexual harassment on the job, racial discrimination, and so forth. On this basis, we can solve our housing crisis. We can ban any foreclosures, any evictions, any utility turnoffs, because everyone will have a steady income, and we can reschedule payments. We can transform our schools so that they work, because no children will be dragged down by the poverty of their families. We can have federal funding that will give better teacher salaries, smaller classes, sufficient care for all students. We can provide access to higher education with free tuition at all secondary schools, get rid of student debt. And in addition to this, of course, we need to have a single-payer healthcare system so that we can all have our right to health realized, without which we can't exercise any freedom. But we also, of course, have to solve our climate crisis. And if we have a federal job guarantee, we can ensure that anyone who loses their job when we shut down the fossil fuel industry and replace it with green energy, they will have a job awaiting them. Now, all of these rights, which represent a genuine new birth of freedom, are empty and meaningless if we do not have a legal care for all system, which guarantees that we have equal access to legal advice and legal representation in every kind of legal matter, both criminal and civil. With that, we can all stand up for our rights. And I put before you a social rights agenda that genuinely represents a fundamental transformation of our nation. We have everything we need to put it into place. Right now, we can fund all of it through fair taxation that puts the burden on the top 10%. We can end all federal income and wealth taxes on the bottom 90 and have highly graduated income and wealth taxes on the top 1% and 10%. And we can, in a sense, become a righteous nation. So I want you to think about all of this platform. Think of the fundamental importance of a federal job guarantee to wipe out unemployment and poverty wages, and think of the crucial significance of a legal care for all program that ensures we could all fight for our rights. Let's make history together. Let's forge a new birth of freedom. And that's what I'm trying to do, and hopefully transform the political discussion here in Georgia and across the nation. So I'd like to engage in a critical discussion of these points.
Yeah. Two things right
Yeah,
here.
sure.
Number one, when you say single health payment,